Hello viewers, I'm your host Uzma Jafri with another episode of South Asia Focus. Let's begin the show with India, which hosted a two-day informal meeting of World Trade Organization in New Delhi. Delegates from as many as 52 countries participated in the event that provided an opportunity to freely discuss the prevailing complex trade issues around the globe. A report.
Indian capital New Delhi hosted the largest informal ministerial meeting for a frank and meaningful dialogue between the member countries to resolve the prevailing crisis that has risen significantly after US President Donald Trump imposed import tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% for aluminium for all bearing Canada and Mexico. Indian Trade Minister Suresh Prabhu, expressing his concerns on the harm posed by unilateral trade actions by some countries that had caused a global outcry, said that the role of the World Trade Organization had become even more important as it had to ensure the growth of global trade that benefits all countries.
Has become even more important, has always been important, but now has become even more important, considering the recent trends that we are witnessing, in which countries are trying to unilaterally take certain actions which in long term will harm everybody. And therefore we must ensure that we keep the global trade growing, which benefits all the countries.
Keeping in view the significance of the event, Pakistan, that had earlier denied participating in the event, also showed up through a diplomatic representation. The meeting was convened by India in the aftermath of the failure of the trade talks at Buenos Aires last year on account of differences among the members of the WTO. India has been keenly pushing agriculture issues at the World Trade Organization. It has also been raising its voice against bringing new issues, especially those which are not directly linked to trade, to the negotiating table. Calling for a united front to respond to the US tariffs, WTO Director General Roberto Azevedo said the recent unilateral trade measures had the potential to escalate tensions.
We heard today many countries saying we have a concern with this, there is a potential for escalation, we have to proceed very carefully and try to work within the framework of the WTO.
Ministers also called on Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Welcoming the dignitaries, the Prime Minister expressed confidence that the deliberations at the informal WTO ministerial meeting would be constructive. WTO Director General also called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the day. It is hoped that the mini-ministerial meet will pave the way for resolving several pending issues in the global trading body. Modi reiterated India's commitment to a rule-based multilateral trading system based on the principles of inclusiveness and consensus. He said that the robust conflict resolution mechanism is one of the key benefits of the WTO. He also underscored the need of countering the challenges being posed to the multilateral trading system.
India has said that it will take up the issue of trade protectionism measures imposed by the United States through a bilateral dialogue. Moving on to the illegally occupied Kashmir region of Pakistan, where in a dastardly and cowardly act of violence, the state police opened fire at a peaceful demonstration held by locals commemorating the Kashmir Day. The protesters were demanding freedom from the clutches of Pakistan. A biased treatment to the people of the region by rulers of Islamabad is an established fact, but this incident of unprecedented brutality has unmasked Pakistan's inhumane psyche in dealing with the peaceful dissent of the people of the region. A report.
Naeem Butt, a Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front activist who was grievously injured in the open firing of Pakistani police, succumbed to his injuries in hospital in Pakistani capital Islamabad. His offence was that he sloganeered and voiced his grief against repressive Pakistan administration during the Kashmir Day event in the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. However, this massacre was not the first incident when a law enforcement agency of Pakistan resorted to extreme high-handedness to stifle freedom of expression of the common people, but an attempt to kill with the impunity has exposed an even more brutal face of the authorities. People from all walks of life have vehemently condemned the action of the police while seeking an immediate probe into the matter. Sardar Shaukat Ali Kashmiri, chairman of United Kashmir People's National Party, expressing grief over the incident, said locals were subjected to Islamabad-sponsored carnage on an everyday basis.
और चूंकि ये जो 16 मार्च है ये स्टेट ऑफ जम्मू कश्मीर का फाउंडेशन डे है, तो इस फाउंडेशन डे पे कुछ लोग जो है वो इसको सेलिब्रेट कर रहे थे। जैसे यूनाइटेड कश्मीर पीपल्स नेशनल पार्टी ने इस डे को सेलिब्रेट करने का पहले से ऐलान किया हुआ था, तो कुछ लोगों ने इस दिन को एक अमन के दिन के तौर पर लिया कि हमारी रियासत में अमन होना चाहिए, लोगों को पुरअमन ज़िंदगी बसर करने के मौके मुहैया किया जाना चाहिए। लेकिन बदकिस्मती से पाकिस्तान और उसकी सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस ने इस अमन मार्च पे भी गोलियां चला के लोगों को ज़ख्मी करके जो है तो ये बताया है कि यहाँ अमन हमारी ख्वाहिशों के ताबे है, आप अमन की ख्वाहिश नहीं कर सकते।
An American attitude, blatant human rights violations and brute repression of reasonable voices have been the story of the region for the past 7 decades, and it's only getting worse with the time. Tahira Tawqir, a women wing leader of the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front who got critically injured after being shot in the eye during the incident, said that it was a preconceived and willful act of terror meted out to repress the voice demanding freedom.
आज़ाद कश्मीर हुकूमत की तरफ से पुंछ इंतज़ामिया ने जो अपना एक किरदार अदा किया, इसमें वो इंतहाई शर्मनाक है। हम इसकी पुरज़ोर मज़म्मत करते हैं। किसी किस्म का कोई ऐसा सीन वहाँ पे नहीं था कि लोगों के ऊपर इस तरह खुली जो है वो फायरिंग की जाती और शेल फेंके जाते, और कुछ लोग एक गलत फहमी की बिना पे पुल की पार लोग चले भी गए थे, लेकिन वो अपनी क़यादत के बुलाने पे तमाम के तमाम लोग वापस आ गए थे। उसके बाद पुलिस ने ये जो है सारा सिलसिला शुरू किया जो बहुत शर्मनाक था। इन्होंने इतनी शर्म नहीं की कि इस मार्च के अंदर ख़वातीन हैं, छोटे छोटे बच्चे हैं, बुज़ुर्ग लोग जो हैं वो मौजूद थे, बड़ी तादाद में नौजवान मौजूद थे। इसके बावजूद इन्होंने खुली फायरिंग की।
These people have been marginalized from the political and social discourse of Pakistan. Although Pakistan has repeatedly claimed the region and people to be its own for years, but the fact remains that these people are second-class citizens for Islamabad who can be sacrificed at any moment to meet the strategic or vicious needs of Pakistan.
It is high time that the international community takes cognizance of the rising human rights violations against these people. Moving on to Afghanistan, where a suicide bomber blew himself up near a shrine in the capital city of Kabul, killing at least 36 people and wounding dozens. The attack took place as the Afghan capital celebrated the Nawruz holiday, marking the start of the Persian New Year. A report.
Atmosphere of festivities in Kabul quickly turned into that of mourning after a suicide bomber blew himself up near Karte Sakhi Shrine in a heavily Shiite area in the west of the city, killing dozens of people and injuring several others. The explosion underlined the threat to the city from militant attacks, despite government promises to tighten security in the wake of an attack in central Kabul that killed around 100 people in January. Militant group Islamic State, which has claimed several previous attacks on Shiite targets, claimed responsibility, saying the attack specifically targeted Shiites celebrating Nawruz, its Amaq news agency said.
انفجار شد نفهمیدیم که چی رقم افتیدیم کل ما بیشتر از بسیار نفر افتیده بودم اونجا.
There has been a spike in attacks against Shia minority community. Muhammad Safar, an eyewitness, narrated the horrific scene as he saw.
ساعت 12 بجه امید 6 بودیم امینجا بسیار گرم امید قوی کرد انفجار مگم بسیار نفر امینجا افتید بیچارا دیگه همین چیزایی که بود کل گریخت این طرف و طرف دیگه باز پلیس یک 10 دقیقه بعدش آمد جمع کرد جنازه رو.
Kabul had been on alert for attacks over Nawruz holiday, but the bomber was still able to detonate his explosives as people were leaving the Karte Sakhi shrine. Afghanistan's fragile security has been unable to contain the rapidly rising violence in the country. At least 200 people have died in Kabul alone in this year in attacks by the Islamic State affiliate and Taliban, which often fights the former in Afghanistan. ill-equipped security personnel have been reduced to mere messengers of bad news.
از محفل آمده بودن به طرف خانه‌های خود می‌رفتند و با خوشی و خوشحالی می‌رفتند، در بین ازا که تماما ملکیتشان انتحار کرده و یک تعداد وطندارای ما را به شهادت رسانده.
The seemingly endless attacks have undermined support for the government of President Ashraf Ghani, who offered last month to hold peace talks with the Taliban insurgents fighting to drive out the international forces and reimpose their version of strict Islamic law. The Taliban have so far shown little sign of accepting the offer of talks with the Western-backed government, which they consider an illegitimate foreign-imposed regime, although they have offered to talk to the United States.
Kabul has repeatedly accused its neighbor Pakistan of providing safe havens to those terrorizing Afghanistan. Moving on to Maldives, where President Abdullah Yameen lifted a 45-day emergency which he had imposed after a Supreme Court ruling overturned the criminal convictions of 9 of his opposition leaders and reinstated 12 parliamentarians who were removed from the House for defecting to the opposition. A report.
A statement released from the office of President of Maldives lifted the state of emergency from the country after 45 days. Citing a threat to the national security, Yameen had imposed the emergency on February 5 for 15 days and extended it by another 30 days with parliament approval, a move challenged by the opposition. His office said in a statement that there still existed a threat to the national security, but the president, on the advice of the security services and with an intention to restore normalcy in the country, had lifted the emergency. The statement also said that the nation could grow without incurring further losses. Mohammad Nasheed, the exiled former president, said Yameen lifted the emergency because he now has no need for it. In a Twitter post, he said Yameen had overrun the judiciary and legislature, arrested hundreds unlawfully and introduced a new normal in Maldives, that is, full dictatorship. Meanwhile, India released an official statement welcoming the revocation of the state of emergency and asked Maldivian government to restore all articles of the constitution to allow the Supreme Court and other branches of the judiciary to operate in full independence to promote and support the free and proper functioning of the parliament.
Despite revoking the state of emergency, an indirect crackdown against the political opponents of the president continues as hundreds of dissidents have been thrown in jail and strong charges have been levelled against them. We have Ms. Priti Patnaik, a political expert on South Asia, with us to speak more on the issue. Ms. Patnaik, do you think the state of emergency has been revoked in its true sense, as former President Gayoom, Chief Justice and other judges will still face the trial for terrorism?
I think yes, the emergency has been lifted after 45 days, but the problem is that he has already dealt with all his political opponents. So therefore, in that sense, lifting of the emergency actually is not bringing back the fundamental freedoms of speech and expression, which can be used by the political opposition to actually deal with the current President Abdullah Yameen's regime.
As accused by former President Nasheed, do you think Abdullah Yameen has achieved his objective by throwing his opponents in jail and suspending a section of Supreme Court ruling that went against him?
Not just by arresting his political opponents, and especially the former Chief Justice of Maldivian Supreme Court, as well as his President Gayoom, who was the former president and at one point of time was ally of Mr. Abdullah Yameen. So therefore, he has already dealt with the opposition, and he was fearing that from the Supreme Court, if there could be some kind of political opposition, he has already replaced the Chief Justice. So my contention is basically he has achieved his objectives, but the thing is that as long as the Maldivian National Army supports the regime, I think he is going to stay in power.
How do you analyze the political developments in South Asia, where two countries, Maldives and Sri Lanka, have restored normalcy within a week?
I think the two countries, the reason for Maldives to impose emergency and the reason for Sri Lanka to impose emergency is completely different. In the context of Maldives, the emergency was imposed to deal with the political opposition and at least to depose off the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court who had given that verdict of freeing the political opponent. So it had much more political content in terms of the regime which is trying to deal with the political opposition by putting some of the people behind the bar, and so that in the next election he actually does not face any kind of opposition from the main opposition party. Whereas in the context of Sri Lanka, if you see, yes, there was the emergency because of the, if you have seen the religious violence which took place in Maldives. So in a sense, both the countries are back to being normal after the state of emergency has been lifted.
Thank you, Ms. Patnaik. Moving on to the sprawling camps of Cox's Bazaar in Bangladesh, where the construction work under the supervision of United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees UNHCR is underway in Rohingya refugee camps for the upcoming monsoon season. Hundreds of thousands of refugees have been staying in the camps since August last year after a military offensive launched by the Myanmar military forced them to leave their homes in Rakhine.
High altitude areas are being prepared for the families living in low-lying areas so that they can shift during the imminent rainy season hitting Bangladesh in a few days. Canals are being cleared to minimize flooding, which severely affects parts of Bangladesh in this region every year. UNHCR says that it is in negotiations with the Bangladesh government to relocate refugees who are likely to face the brunt once it starts precipitating in the country. It has already relocated 620 families so far in the Kutupalong refugee camp to safer parts of the settlement.
Now the Kutupalong is the world's biggest mega camp, and more than 600,000 people live here. And upcoming monsoon, there is a probability of landslide and waterlogging. So we have to shift it to some vulnerable families from Kutupalong area to the new safe places. Government acquired 123 acres of land for their relocations, and with the support of the UNHCR, we have to develop this area, and you see what is happening there.
Meanwhile, some elderly refugees arrived in the Cox's Bazaar accusing Myanmar of keeping them in the captivity for months. However, it was not immediately clear what the refugees were arrested for in their hometown in Mongdor, but they said the Myanmar military called for them to gather at a school field in November 2016 and allegedly detained forcefully, injuring some residents seriously by breaking their legs and hands. 95-year-old Oli Ahmed said he was detained along with family members and spent 1.5 years in jail in terrible conditions before being released earlier this month on March 5.
military tara andilla guri mare de behashi guli to mare tara to guli mare are ara meeting dragori naraiji hemi kegori khalla tuli tuli mari sa so maze rashtre maji kishno lagi 11 নম্বর কি 17 নাকি 16 আর ফোয়া দুয়া আর বাই দুয়া আর বাই তো গোয়া আর হাজামল বেগুনে হাজান পর্যন্ত আছে এটা দত বেশি মাঝে বার্তা তো নদে তাহলে ভিন্ন ইয়ার আর রাজা মন্ডল হয়ে ইতারা হোকে নিয়ে হরে হরে
He added that his brothers and sons were still in jail. Another resident of Mongdor, Rashid Ahmed, said they were initially detained without food and water before being placed in jail for over a year. He said the prison released the sick and the elderly in March. They said they had no choice but to flee to the refugee camps in Bangladesh because their homes in Myanmar had been looted and razed to the ground. The UN says nearly 700,000 Muslim Rohingya have fled Buddhist-majority Myanmar to Bangladesh after militant attacks in August sparked a crackdown led by security forces in Rakhine State that the UN and United States have said constitutes ethnic cleansing. Myanmar has repeatedly denied reports implicating soldiers in widespread abuses of Rohingya civilians, particularly in Mongdo, a border district in western Rakhine state.
There was a deal signed between Myanmar and Bangladesh for repatriation of refugees. However, it didn't see any major progress owing to documentation and other technical issues. Moving on to India, known for its rich and varied textile heritage, recently put a spectacular display of the hottest trends presented by some of the country's top designers, as it hosted the 31st edition of Amazon India Fashion Week in its capital city, New Delhi. The 5-day event showcased some of the beautiful collections by almost 100 designers.
With an awe-inspiring union of traditional and contemporary sensibilities, the Amazon India Fashion Week showcased some of the amazing autumn-winter collection by the premier Indian designers. The Fashion Week began on a high note with the master collections of Sean Randhawa, the owner of Patin Heritage brand, and Anupama Dayal. While Sean Randhawa's collection drew inspiration from the Central Asian motifs of Uzbekistan, the designer Anupama Dayal combined popular Northern Indian traditional embroidery with androgynous patterns.
It's a Patin tradition to translate the embroideries into contemporary wear, make it relevant in today's lifestyle. So we've used Uzbek patterns, inspirations of embroideries. The cuts are obviously modern, contemporary, and it's autumn winter, and we put beautiful vivid colors. It's very bright, bold embroideries, and then partnered with Loop India to do this interesting, trendy, young jewelry.
Similarly, on the second day, Bollywood actress Bipasha Basu raised the temperatures as she dazzled the ramp for designer Karishma Sondhi, wearing a beautiful embellished pastel red lehenga. Actor Riya Chakrabarti also turned the heads up as she walked the ramp in a silver sparkly dress with big sheer sleeves and a sheer hemline, turning the muse for designer Reena Dhaka. Ensembles made using natural fabrics reigned supreme on the third day of the Fashion Week. While designer Madhu Jain's collection stood out with intricate silver embroidery, tassel detailing and layered ruffle sleeves, the fashion designer Sahil Aneja too wowed the audience with his menswear collection that was a mix of formal and casual.
For 15 years I've been working with the alternative fiber, that is the bamboo textile, and what we showcased was on the ramp a first of its kind in the world collection, bamboo silk ikat. And because we've used several world ikat techniques to develop this textile, what we showcased on the ramp was Indonesian style in bamboo silk ikat.
Vibrant fabrics, geometric prints, luxurious menswear, ranging from silk to velvet dominated the collection on the fourth day as designers Siddharth Teitler and Gautam Gupta of brand Achur present their autumn-winter collection. Overall, the Amazon India Fashion Week posed a great occasion for the fashionistas who got to witness the exuberant collection of around 100 fashion doyens adorned by models and celebrities alike.
Indian fashion and lifestyle industry is taking giant strides forward and has shown a tremendous growth in offline as well as online market in the recent past. With that, we come to the end of this week's episode. See you next week. Take care and goodbye.